You are on your knees in the sand. It burns through your skin. Your legs ache, locked in place, trembling from strain and heat. An iron collar clamps around your neck, cinched so tightly that every swallow feels like choking. A chain runs from it, linking you to 11 other women, close enough that you can feel their movements, close enough to hear them breathe. One is crying, quietly now. Another whispers a prayer, syllables unfamiliar, a language you don't understand, but somehow recognizes desperation. A shadow cuts across your face. For half a second, the sun disappears. Relief washes over you, brief, cruel. Then hands seize your jaw. Your mouth is forced open. Fingers push inside, pressing against your teeth, your gums, the back of your throat. You gag. Your body tries to recoil, but the chain jerks tight. He doesn't stop. He inspects your tongue for sickness, pulls your eyelids wide, checks the whites of your eyes, hooks a finger inside your lip and drags it down, exposing your mouth like livestock at a market. Because that's what you are now. You don't know it yet, but this inspection will decide the rest of your life. For the man doing the inspecting, this moment carried no weight at all. He would forget your face before the sun set. 12 days ago, this wasn't your world. 12 days ago, you were the daughter of a village leader, somewhere in the Sahel. You woke to the sound of your mother calling your name each morning. You knew the paths between the huts. You knew where the shade fell at midday. You had a name that meant something. She's dead now. You watched her die, and you kept walking afterward, because the men with swords made the rule clear, without speaking it aloud. Stop moving, and you join her. In Arabic, there is a word for what you've become, Jariya. It translates loosely as slave girl. But that translation is clean, too gentle. It hides the truth. What the word actually means is this. Your body is inventory. Your future belongs to whoever pays for it. Your past no longer exists. The man examining you steps back. He gives a small nod. Another man steps forward, holding a leather pouch. You hear the sound of coins shifting inside. Metal changes hands. You have just been sold, for the third time this month. And where they are taking you, historians will spend centuries pretending never existed. This is the Arab slave trade. 14 million Africans. More than 13 centuries. That length of time matters more than the number. Systems don't survive 13 centuries unless they are carefully maintained. A system so efficient at erasing human beings that almost no descendants remain to tell the story. If this history matters to you, subscribe to Grim History, because we do not turn away from the stories the world tried to bury. You already know about the Atlantic slave trade, ships, chains, plantations in the Americas, 12 million Africans transported across the ocean over roughly 400 years. That history has museums, memorials, films. Children are taught it in classrooms. Politicians reference it in speeches. But there was another slave trade, older, longer, and by some measures, even larger. The Arab slave trade began in the 7th century, following the rise of Islam and the Arab conquests that swept across North Africa. It did not end until the 20th century. Saudi Arabia officially abolished slavery in 1962. Mauritania followed in 1981. These are not ancient dates. These are years your grandparents remember. There are people alive today who were born into societies where this trade still operated legally. Between roughly 650 AD and 1900 AD, historians estimate that between 14 and 17 million Africans were taken from their homes and transported to North Africa, the Middle East, and the Arabian Peninsula. Some scholars believe the true number is higher. Records were inconsistent, deaths went uncounted, entire caravans vanished without documentation. More people, over a longer span of time, moved through routes that crossed 3 continents. And yet, almost no one talks about it. Why? Because this trade was engineered to leave nothing behind, and it worked. In the United States today, there are around 45 million people of African descent. Their existence is evidence. Their communities keep memory alive. Their struggles ensure the history cannot disappear. But in the Middle East, after 13 centuries of importing millions of Africans, there is almost nothing. small communities in Yemen, scattered populations in southern Iraq, a few thousand Afro-Arabs in Morocco, tiny remnants where there should be millions. So where did 14 million people go? Historians searched for migrations. They searched for lost records. They did not want the answer they eventually found. The answer is the darkest part of this entire story. The men were castrated. This is not speculation. It is not rumour. It is documented across hundreds of primary sources spanning centuries. Arab slave traders systematically castrated African males at rates estimated between 80 and 90%. The procedure was carried out at specific points along the trade routes. Egyptian monasteries became infamous for it. Coptic Christian monks developed techniques that slightly improved survival rates. Slightly. For every man who survived, 3 to 5 died from blood loss, infection, or shock. Some accounts suggest even higher death rates. Consider the math. If a trader wanted 100 living eunuchs to sell at market, he might begin with 400 or 500 men. To the traders, this was not massacre. It was cost. The rest died screaming in the sand. The logic was cruel but efficient. Castrated slaves could not reproduce. They could not form families. They could not build communities strong enough to resist. They could not leave descendants who might one day demand justice. They worked, they aged, they died, and they were replaced by the next raid, generation after generation, for over 1,300 years. But the women served a different purpose entirely. They were kept intact, kept fertile, preserved specifically for what their bodies could produce. And what happened to them is a story that historical records describe only in euphemism, in careful wording, in deliberate silences, in details considered too indecent to record openly. The system required constant supply. Arab merchants were not usually raiders themselves. They were businessmen, operators of vast commercial networks stretching across continents. They did not storm villages personally. Instead, they built economic systems that encouraged Africans to capture and sell one another. Firearms flowed into the continent. European guns traded through Arab middlemen. Textiles, luxury goods, salt, precious in sub-Saharan regions. And in return, human beings. The kingdom of Dahomey, in what is now Benin, became one of the major suppliers. Its economy grew dependent on annual slave raids against neighbouring peoples. The Sultanate of Zanzibar controlled the East African routes. The Funj Sultanate dominated the Nile corridor. Tuareg groups controlled trans-Saharan passages. African kingdoms went to war not for land, but for people. Captured survivors were marched to collection points and sold to Arab traders. The cycle fed itself endlessly. More guns meant more successful raids. More raids meant more captives. More captives meant more buying power. More buying power meant more guns. A machine that consumed human suffering and grew stronger with every life it devoured. Villages were attacked at dawn when resistance was weakest. Warriors surrounded settlements while people slept. The assault was sudden, overwhelming. Men who fought back were killed immediately. Men who surrendered were inspected on the spot. Age, health, strength. Young, strong men were separated for castration and sale. Older men with little market value were often killed where they stood. But the women faced a different calculation. Traders examined them carefully. Age mattered. Girls too young required years of feeding before becoming profitable. Women too old brought reduced prices. The ideal age lay in between. And what happened to the women who met those ideal criteria is where this story goes next. The most valuable age range fell between roughly 13 and 25 years old. Old enough to survive what lay ahead. Young enough to be exploited for decades. Appearance mattered a great deal. Arab markets had precise preferences, understood instinctively by experienced traders. Certain body types, certain facial features, subtle differences that could double or triple a price depending on the destination. Different regions wanted different things. Across nearly every market, women from Ethiopia commanded the highest prices. Their features were widely considered desirable. A woman from those regions could sell for twice. sometimes 3 times, what others brought. Those who met the preferred criteria were separated immediately. They received slightly better treatment during transport, marginally more care, not out of mercy, never mercy. Damaged merchandise lost value. Preserving the investment was simply good business. Families were broken apart at capture sites or centralized collection points. Mothers torn from children, husbands ripped from wives, sisters dragged away from brothers. Lifelong bonds were destroyed in minutes, with no chance of reunion. European missionaries and explorers who witnessed these separations left written accounts of scenes they struggled to describe. The screaming, the desperate grasping as families clung to one another for seconds longer, final touches of skin, final sounds of familiar voices. Then the chains tightened, and people who had shared entire lives were pulled in opposite directions, never to meet again, never to know what became of one another. One missionary wrote that the cries followed him for years afterward, that even decades later, he could still hear mothers calling for children who would never answer. No matter how far he travelled, the sounds came with him. Those cries echoed across Africa for 13 centuries, and almost no one beyond the continent ever heard them. Then came the Sahara. The trans-Saharan routes were not measured in distance but in death. Picture the span from New York to Denver. Now imagine crossing it on foot, in chains with almost no water, beneath a sun that kills. From collection points in sub-Saharan Africa to the great northern markets, Tripoli, Tunis, Cairo, Marrakesh, caravans travelled staggering distances. Some routes exceeded 2,000 miles, others stretched even farther. The journey took 2 to 3 months under ideal conditions. Conditions were never ideal. The Sahara is the largest hot desert on Earth. Daytime temperatures routinely climb past 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Sand becomes hot enough to blister skin on contact. Shade is non-existent.